Everybody's got a price, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a pod, it's the $1 million man. Podcast in demand. Understand, everybody's got a price. $1 million man. Everybody's got a price.
What's up, everybody? It's Marcus D'Angelo, and we are back for another episode of Everybody's Got a Pod, but the $1 million man is overseas. He's seeing his fans over there in the UK. So unfortunately, we will not be joined by him this week. However, we are still going to have some fun this week. We're dipping way back into the archives to look at 2 early episodes of Ask Ted Anything, some questions that folks have not heard answered if you haven't been a full-time listener to the podcast since the very beginning. So enjoy it. Ted is going to be back in action next week, and we're going to be talking about the Best Dressed Man contest in the Mid-South area back 40 years ago. So fun times coming up here on the show. I hope you guys enjoy the episode this week, and we'll see you next time right here on Everybody's Got a Pod. Let's get rolling here. We've got Drayton Holmes, who asks, so many wrestlers in your era passed through the AWA at some point, but you never wrestled there. Did you ever get approached at any point to wrestle in the AWA?
You know, it's funny. That's the one place I never went. The AWA was basically based in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The promoter and owner was Vern Gagne. And that's funny because, and again, Vern Gagne and my dad wrestled each other in college. and actually, and one of the few people to beat my dad was Vern Gagne, and it wasn't a pin, it was points, you know, and when I see that, and it was very close, and so it was one of those things that it could have gone either way, man. But Vern ended up having the bragging rights. Vern, you know, to his credit, he started, you know, he started that territory. He was the guy. And I remember when we were trying to go back and live in Omaha, Nebraska. My dad we were living in Omaha. My dad was working the Kansas City territory. Well, Kansas City's only 200 miles from Omaha, and so he could do that. But again, lots of travel back and forth from Omaha, but in Omaha, the TV in Omaha was not, the TV in Omaha was coming out of, I think, Minnesota or it was local. But I know Vern Gagne came down because he was always on the show. He was always on the wrestling show in Omaha. Mm-hmm. And then my dad, you know, that's funny. And we lived there. My dad, you know, they weren't wrestling each other because my dad wasn't working that territory. So,
Ted, I also wanted to show you, there's an interesting photo out there of you with Nick Bockwinkel, who is a huge AWA guy. There's the photo itself, and it looks like you two are kind of wrestling over a belt. You know, Nick was pretty much synonymous with the AWA. Do you remember the circumstances surrounding this very fascinating photo?
Is that the AWA World Championship?
It looks like
yeah.
it.
Well, I tell you where Nick Bockwinkel and I would run into each other. Houston.
Oh, okay.
And like I said, Houston was one of those towns that drew its talent from everywhere.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So that would be the only, that's the only place we could have taken that picture together.
It's a really cool shot. We'll have to share it on our social media. All right, next up, we've got Roman Gomez, who asks, your black glove was called Maggie. Any significance to using the name Maggie for the black glove?
No, I just, you know, I guess the influence was, there was a song, Maggie May.
Oh, Rod Stewart.
And so for whatever reason, you know, yeah, I said, you know, old Maggie here. So that was the influence. Maggie May, the Rod Stewart song.
I like it, man. Simple.
I load old Maggie up and knock him out.
Next up, we've got Jonathan Michael, who asks, when you introduced The Undertaker at Survivor Series 1990, did you have any idea that he would go on for another 30 years and become the best character the company had ever produced? Actually, Ted, as we're recording this right now, today is the 33rd anniversary of Survivor Series 1990.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had no idea. I mean, and here's the thing: is like that's the first time that I ever met Mark, his real name, is his debut there, and the reason I introduced him is Vince told me to. It's like, that was the deal. I guess it wasn't like he was coming on board and being a part of my ship, but no, I don't think anybody realized how long of a run that the Undertaker would have. I mean, I can still remember like the last couple of times I was working for him. And, and by that time, obviously I'm talking and I'm trying to be a producer. I'm backstage altogether. And I remember saying, Mark, how many times are you going to do this? I mean, he kept retiring and then coming out of retirement, right? Just one more.
Well, that same event, Survivor Series 1990, Ted, and this is just me freewheeling it here because I want to hear your answer on this one. It was also famous for another debut. So the Undertaker came out, and then also that night, the Gobbledygooker came out of the egg. What were your thoughts as an old school guy seeing the Gobbledygooker come out and dance with Mean Gene?
Oh my gosh. And it was just hilarious. I mean, it's like, what else could it be? The Gobbledygooper. Thanksgiving, right?
It was Thanksgiving 1990. And
who was the Gobbledygooker?
Do you remember?
Yes, I do.
It's Hector Guerrero.
Hector Guerrero. What a good guy for it. Yeah.
Awesome athlete. Like, I guess one of the big draws was that, like, hey, he's a great athlete. He can do like flips and stuff. He's into like gymnastics and whatnot. Yeah. So he'll be perfect for it. But apparently it was the suit he was in was so restrictive he couldn't do any of his usual flips and all that stuff. So it kind of hampered him. But man, it's kind of feels like a rough go of things there for Hector Guerrero. I'm sure he would have liked to have come in a different manner.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
C&J Collectibles is up next. You were in some of the most influential factions in wrestling history. Which faction did you have the most fun in?
Oh my gosh! I mean, okay, you'd have to name them for me.
We can run a couple down. We've got the NWO, which I'm sure was fun in the beginning, but you've noted before that it became less fun as Bischoff kind of stole your role. We've also got the Rat Pack. You've got Money Incorporated. Trying to think of others, Ted, and I'm drawing a blank. I mean, Money Inc. Oh, wait, Money Inc. And what was it? Was the $1 Million Corporation?
Yeah. Well, I think the corporation probably was the biggest. In other words, by that time, I was not a physical wrestler. I was in a managing role, and I was managing the corporation, and it was the talent that was in the corporation. I had some real headliners in my camp, right?
Yeah, I mean, some awesome names in there, between Sid and 1-2-3 Kid and King Kong Bundy, So you had some pretty fun names in there, Tatanka. So yeah. That's a good one, man. I thought for sure though that you were going to say the Rat Pack was your favorite.
Well, okay. I guess, okay. Now I was a manager, with the corporation, but the Radback, as far as me and as a faction and me as still a physical wrestler, would absolutely be at the top of the list. I mean, me and was it Matt Bourne and Hacksaw? Yeah.
You guys were fun to watch.
And then something I think that might have helped break up the Rat Pack is that Matt Bourne and my buddy didn't get along too well.
Well,
Yeah.
Funny you should bring that up, Ted, because literally the next question is Bruce Frederick, who asks, "Were you there when Hacksaw beat up Matt Bourne? Were you present for that?"
Yes, I was. I was. I was there. It's kind of like, uh, Matt had to be put in his place, and I don't know why, what the big deal was and, I can't remember. I mean, did they you know, I think it was maybe fighting over, okay, Ted's number one because, I'm the leader of the Rat Pack and who's number two,
Well, interestingly, so I also do a podcast with Hacksaw on adfreeshows.com, and it's an exclusive over there. So go check it out. It's called the Hacksaw Hour. And I spoke to him about it, and he was saying that at one point, Matt was apparently being rough with some woman at a bar, and Jim kind of escorted her into a car and away from Matt. And then Matt kicked a dent into Hacksaw's car. And so that prompted Hacksaw to come after him. Does that ring a bell for you?
No, you know what? I never got that story.
never got that far in it.
The rest of the story.
Now, there was also and this was covered on Dark Side of the Ring because apparently some guy in the crowd came after Jim. Jim punched him, knocked him down, and to Jim, okay, that's the end of it. But apparently while the guy was down, Matt Bourne took the liberty of kicking the guy in the face badly enough to break his orbital bone, and then a lawsuit ensued. Were you there whenever that incident took place?
I think I was, yeah. Now that you brought it up, yeah, that was bad.
Yeah, and cost Jim some more.
If I'd have been Jim, I'd have been pissed off too.
Yeah, I mean, the guy's already down on the ground. It's over. Jim got him.
And so, number one, Jim's attacked by the guy and just puts him down. And then more, it's like, in my opinion, Jim shouldn't have been part of that lawsuit. That lawsuit should have been on Matt Bourne, period.
Well, the way the Jim tells it, apparently Matt skipped town. He left the territory at that time and got out of Mid-South and, apparently never incurred any legal fees. So Jim was kind of stuck with it.
Wow. Yep.
Bruce has got another follow-up on this, or not this, but another follow-up on a fight story. Were you there when John Nord and Butch Reed got into their big fist fight in Mid-South?
You know what? I don't think I was. For whatever reason, I wasn't there. But I mean, obviously, I was. I found out about it because it was like right away. We were wrestling every night. So
yeah, apparently the fight got pretty bad, and then Watts was like, okay, you guys. He actually kind of made them finish it. He was like, okay, if you guys got to get this out of your system, so you fight each other right here and now. that's what I've been told over the years. So that sounds like a Bill Watts way to approach it, right?
Oh yeah, that's Bill.
Next up, we've got Jameson Ross Spargo, who asks, "Who is your favorite and least favorite booker?"
Wow. Who? Well, when I was working for Bill Watts, one of the guys that booked for Bill and did a very good job was Buck Robley.
Ah, okay.
Trying to think. When I first went to Atlanta, I'm trying to think who. You would think that no, not Ole. The guy that they were brothers. Robert Fuller.
Ah, okay.
Robert Fuller, nice guy, but I'm sorry. When it comes to booking wrestling, he didn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. Horrible booker. And actually, and Jim Barnett obviously was the guy that everybody had to answer to, And eventually he got Buck Robley to come in there, and Buck saved it. I mean, yeah, it was kind of like what Jim Barnett told Robert Fuller was there. Basically, he told him, he said, there's the possibility that Ted DiBiase's in line for being the next NWA or one of the next NWA world champions. Get him over. The way he got me over was he put me with himself in tag team matches. So he wasn't just getting me over. He was trying to get his own butt over, and so anyway, it didn't last very long. And
Yeah, that's maybe not the way to do it.
No, but I mean, just in general, the booking was just horrible.
Buck Robley, I've heard that he was an interesting character as well. What was he like?
Buck was, I mean, Buck liked his weed. He liked to smoke that weed, but brother, it didn't affect him. His knowledge of the wrestling business was very good. I mean, and he booked very well. He booked for Bill. I mean, Bill Watts isn't going to get you to be a booker if you're not worth a shit. So he was one of the guys that booked for Bill. And another guy that booked for Bill that was very good was Ernie Ladd.
Oh, yeah.
The big cat, man. He was good. Very good.
Smart guy, from everything I've heard, and well respected by everybody.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Evan Peterson is up next, and he asks, who was the worst smelling wrestler that you ever worked with?
Gosh. I don't think I ever had the opportunity to have to experience that.
Really?
I really don't. I can't remember. No. That's something that you would remember is like, oh my God, that guy really stunk. But no, I don't think.
Everybody always talks about Vader probably being the worst if they worked with him. I know that you never ended up working with him. But Jake recently told me about working with Andre and how Andre was a little gassy in the ring. Did you ever experience that?
Well, I mean, gassy's one thing. I mean, gassy's like, he's in there cutting farts, but I mean, you got to understand, I was never Andre's opponent. I was always Andre's partner, always.
So you were in a good spot. You didn't have to deal with that.
I've got to tell the story. And we're in Japan. I may have told it before. We're in Japan. And we just gotten there. We drop our bags, and everybody's going to go out and get something to eat. And so hit the elevator button, and the door opens, and there's Andre. His "Let's go eat, boss." Okay, and the elevator starts down, and it stops like on every other floor. And every time the door opens, 2 or 3 more little Japanese people get on the elevator. Now, Marcus, you and I, and any rational person, would have said 3 stops ago that the elevator was full.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Not in Japan. You see, Japan, the whole country, the entire country is about the size of the state of California.
Mm-hmm.
But the population of Japan is half that of the United States.
Insane.
Yes, and that's really stacking them up. So anyway, so yeah, okay. They keep getting on. Andre reaches over and gives me a little tap, and I looked up at him, and he winked at me. The door closes, and the next thing you hear is the loudest, longest fart I can ever remember in my life. I mean, I'm looking straight forward, and I'm thinking to myself, I know it's the Giant, but how could any human possibly have that much air in their body? And the really sad thing was I kept thinking, the poor guy that's standing directly behind Andre.
Oh no!
Who is just butt level? Because I mean, Andre was 7'4", and all those Japanese guys are maybe 5 maybe 5 feet. So he was getting the dose right in the face.
Right. Oh no.
And brother, I'm gonna tell you something. When that elevator door opened, it was like the Exodus. Those people were tripping over each other trying to get out the door. And as the door closed, all you could hear was Andre going, oh, 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 oh. He looked at me and he says, they won't crowd the big man anymore, will they? Oh, gosh.
Oh my God. I've
Yeah.
never heard that one before. That was great.
Oh, it was. It was. But you'd appreciate it a whole hell of a lot more if you were there.
Oh, I'm glad I wasn't. I don't want to be smelling that. That sounds miserable. Oh Lord. That is something else. I see the whole time I was picturing his back against the back of the elevator. I wasn't picturing somebody behind him. That is brutal. That is brutal. It's gonna be hard to beat that, but we'll try. Red Morris is up next, and he asks, "Did you ever have to work against someone who is really high or really drunk?"
I don't know. I don't think so.
That's pretty
No.
lucky.
Yeah. I fortunately never had to do that. And, and I'll be honest with you, if anything like that would have happened, if I would have gotten in the ring with anybody and I realized that they were just drunk on their butt or high as a kite, I would end the match very quickly. And then, when we got back in the dressing room, all hell would break loose.
Yeah,
For
because
sure.
this person's kind of taking another
I
person's
mean,
life
it's
in their
kind of
hands.
like, because the first rule of wrestling is my first job is to take care of the other guy's body
Mm-hmm.
because we're doing bumps and all that other stuff. And there's times when things, you get sweaty and so you slip. The idea is this: you're always going to try to protect your opponent first, even at the risk of you getting hurt. Yeah, I know. I don't know. But you know what? It works.
Yeah, and it sounds like most guys, for the most part, were
Yeah.
on the straight and narrow when they climb into the ring.
Oh
But
yeah.
you do hear the horror stories about some guys being drunk, some guy taking maybe too many somas before he goes to the ring, and almost never ends well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next up, we've got Tony Weston, who asks, "Who is the worst second generation wrestler of all time?" So we're always talking about the skills of second generation wrestlers. Who do you think is the worst you've ever seen?
A second generation wrestler. Oh gosh, I don't know. Name some.
Well, it's I think that what I'm guessing Tony is referencing or just saw before he asked that question is Ric Flair's son, David. Now David, I've been around him I think once, and he seemed like a really nice guy, and I'm sure he's a great human being, but he was not his dad in the wrestling ring, and you could certainly see that. So that's one of the names that stands out, at least for me personally, as somebody who just wasn't cut out for wrestling.
Yeah, and of course, I met Dad, but I've never seen him in the ring ever.
Ah, okay.
I didn't know he ever was in the ring. And that's probably why, because it was short lived.
It would have been right after you left WCW. He came to WCW and started to get kind of like a mini push, because of who he was. But yeah, it took about 30 seconds of watching him in a match to see like, okay, he is definitely not ready.
Yeah, yeah,
So unfortunate.
yeah. I'm trying to think of, second generation guys. Most of the second generation guys I know were good. Orton. Who else? The Guerreros.
Yeah, Cody.
Yeah, Jake. Yeah. I can't think of any others right offhand, but the ones that I can recall were pretty good.
Robert E. DeWitt is up next. Who was the hardest or most dangerous wrestler to work with? I've heard Goldberg was a bit dangerous with his work ethic, and a lot of wrestlers didn't want to work with him. What's your opinion? So, Ted, we know that the Ultimate Warrior is at the very top of your list when it comes to.
You took the words out of my mouth. The ultimate idiot.
See,
That's what I called it. The ultimate idiot.
I knew where you were going.
I'm sorry he couldn't find his ass with both hands.
Is there anybody else, though, that stands out as somebody that you would get in there and just have trouble getting a good match out of?
I can't think of anybody that was, that I worked with enough to have that opinion. I mean, there had been like jobbers that we called them, guys that were there basically because on the TV shows, oftentimes you were just given a guy who didn't have a name, nobody knew him, but he was your opponent, and basically he was there to get his butt kicked.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we called them jobbers. And there'd been a couple times when I was in the ring with guys like that, when you're trying to tell them what to do and they don't know what they're doing, or they get in there and they would just kind of, because they've never been on TV before and they freeze up or something. But other than that, I can't think of I can't think of anybody.
Yeah, I was trying to think of somebody to pitch your way, and I can't really come up with much of anybody. I know that, like King Kong Bundy in the Mid-South or the Georgia days was not, considered like a super polished guy and maybe a guy that would be hard to get a good match out of. But
No, but I had no problem with him, and he's a smart guy. I mean, he interviewed well. He was good. Yeah, I mean, I can't remember. We would tease each other, and I can't remember what it was about all the time. But
the big joke with him was Ernie Ladd giving him shit about being lazy and saying, "Bundy, you're stealing money."
oh yeah. That's what it was. I would mimic. I would come in the dressing room and mimic Ernie. Bundy, you're stealing money from Mid-South, Bundy.
Hilarious. All right. Well, yeah, again, good. It's you don't want to be having to call out a bunch of guys who are terrible. Now, here's the thing I hear about job guys, because you mentioned them, is that a lot of times they just were local guys that were being brought in and thereby just weren't good and didn't know what they were doing in the ring. And guys like Kevin Sullivan and the Steiners, and I could probably name tens of other people, but they would force them to cooperate, for lack of a better way to put it, where if the guy is in the ring with him and he's not moving the way they want him to, okay, I'm going to force you to move the way I want you to. And they would kind of get rough with them. Kevin Sullivan would do that double stomp on their chest, and the Steiners, of course, would stretch him out there in the ring. Did you ever have to take liberties with a job guy?
There was only maybe once or twice where, I had to get somebody's attention to let them know, who's running this show and why you're here. You're not here to get over, you're here to get me over. And, and of course, which is something that they should know from the get-go and were told from the get-go, and yeah, so I had, I didn't rough too many people up. That wasn't in my nature. But I would rough them up enough to get their attention.
Just like a quick stiff shot to say, like, all right, wake up, let's go.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Martin Pollock is up next. Any good Michael Hayes stories? Anything of any good Michael stories stand out? Everybody seems to have one.
Oh gosh, I loved Michael Hayes. I still do. I'm gonna tell you something. Michael Hayes is really a sharp guy, and he gets a lot of ideas. I mean, he was, he and I think he and Gordy were the original Freebirds, and then Buddy was added later. And I tell you what, Buddy's really good too. You know, I would say of the three, Terry Gordy and Buddy Roberts would be your best workers.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say Terry probably really good because I had some matches. I worked with Terry even in Japan, because we'd been on tours together over there. And I loved his work. Michael is a great idea guy. Michael be a great idea, okay, well, let's do this for a finish. But Michael in the ring, it's like he was rough. He was a little rough around the edges, and he just, I never considered Michael like a tremendous worker.
He had the flamboyance of the team and the charisma.
Oh yeah. Again, you know what Michael had? Charisma, ton of it.
Yep.
He was the mouthpiece for the Freebirds, and he did it very well.
Terry Gordy, before he wound up, of course, having that unfortunate situation on the airplane. I've heard from just about everybody like an absolutely remarkable worker.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Next up, we've got Ed Reese, who's got a simple question, but I don't know if you've spent much time watching this guy. So let's see. He wants to know, what do you think of CM Punk?
I think he's pretty good. I don't know him that well. I mean, I've run into him a couple of times. Like, I've seen him at an autograph session or two. I mean, he's a likable guy. But I haven't watched, and again, mea culpa, but I haven't watched a lot of wrestling for a very long time. And did I love the business? Yeah. Do I still love the business? Yeah. I wish them all well, but it's hard for me to watch the current product because I just don't agree with what they're doing. It's kind of like I watch the men and it looks like a tumbling act.
Mm-hmm.
High spot. Why would you call something a high spot? It's because somewhere in a match where you're on the mat grappling and trying to get the advantage, then all of a sudden you get up and you go off and hit the ropes and tackle and whatever. High spot. That's a high spot. In a 20-minute match, I might have, done 6 or 7 high spots or 8 high spots, but it's not just one high spot after the other. It's not like, and selling. The reason nothing gets over is you have to sell it to get it over. If you're really getting hurt, then you need to act like you're really getting hurt, and so if you're getting your butt kicked and then the guy clotheslines you over the top rope to the floor, you bounce up like a jackrabbit and like you never got, hit. I want you guys to understand or listen to me, what I'm trying to say here. What I see missing, and I hate to say this, but especially with the guys, is believability.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, everybody knows that wrestling is show business now. Okay. But I always used to say this: I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do the best that I can do to make this people believe what they're seeing. It's like when you walk into a good movie, when you see a good movie, why do some actors become megastars and some don't become stars? It's because the megastars are the ones that make you believe. During that 2 hours you're sitting, it's a movie.
Mm-hmm.
During that 2 hours you're sitting in that seat, they can make you mad, they can make you cry, they play on your emotions. That's what a good wrestling match is supposed to do. And I haven't seen it done that way, I'll be honest, for a very long time. The real art is doing it in front of a live crowd. That's the difference. Back when I was a young wrestler, we wrestled every night in front of a different crowd. Sometimes weekly, but every night we got in the ring in front of a live crowd and had a match. And you listen to the crowd. Well, now, even in the developmental program, I think they only have a live show once a week. To me, that doesn't work. The old school way of learning our trade is gone. And that's the thing. I don't know how else to explain it. It's like, because you react off of the crowd, and it's kind of like, you might do something one night and get a great response from a crowd. You do it again the next night, and if they don't respond the way you think they're going to, then you have to be smart enough to think on your feet and do something else that's going to get them where you want them. The reason Jake Roberts and I have such good chemistry in the ring is we both were raised in this business when it was taught the old school way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he would agree with everything I'm saying right now. You can't go out there and just you can't go out there and do the same thing every night. You can't. It's something that you have to feel, and it depends on the crowd, and the crowd's different every night. And again, when Jake and I wrestled, we talked in the ring the whole time. I mean, there's ways that we can talk and hide it, or if we want to call a spot and I'm down there, and I'd look at the referee and I would give the referee the high spot and he would give it to Jake, or vice versa, something like that. But it was all on the spur of the moment. It was, I don't want to spur of the moment sounds.
It was improvised. You guys were doing it on the spot.
Yeah.
You were reacting live to what was happening around you.
Yeah.
And one of the things that frustrates me is, I'm a modern fan who loves the old school wrestling, is that whenever I see it nowadays, I'll see, whatever, 15 super kicks in a match and 3 DDTs and all these like really impressive looking moves, and then nobody's selling them. Right. And it's like, so after a while, it just becomes like white noise, where it's like, if somebody hits a super kick and you're like, oh, cool, what's next? Where back in the day, it used to be somebody hits that super kick and you're like, oh, this might be the end of the match.
Yeah.
Captain Class 87 asks, what wrestler from ECW would you have loved to square off with? Ted, did you ever watch a single second of ECW back in the day?
Not really.
It just does not seem like something that you'd be tuning into to me. No. But Taz, right? He was in WWE for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, whenever I see old school ECW Taz in his prime, that seems like a guy that you would have had really good chemistry with. Are you familiar with much of his work?
Not really. I mean, I heard good things about him. I've never heard, oh, that guy's horrible. No.
Yeah, no, it's
always heard
great wrestler, cool look, and very, very believable out there in the ring. He seemed like he was actually ready to tear a guy's head off whenever you get in the ring with him. But really, he's kind of hit his stride now as an announcer. He's with AEW now as an announcer. But I did want to ask too, before we get off the subject of ECW, have you spent any time around Paul Heyman at all?
Not a lot. Really not a lot. I know Paul enough to say hello.
Okay.
How you doing? How things going? But I've never had a time. I've never had any time. Like, going to dinner or all that other stuff. I've never. It's like I probably not had more than a 5 minutes with him.
Gotcha.
Just see him in the building, wherever we are, we're there. We're both there for the same reason, whatever. So anyway, but I don't know what's the general consensus on him.
Generally speaking, he's considered nowadays possibly the greatest manager of all time, even over Bobby Heenan. A lot of people will put him, because he managed Brock Lesnar and now he manages Roman Reigns and his crew of guys. So a lot of people consider him the greatest to ever do it.
Well, that might be, but I again, I don't want to, it's kind of like, I don't want to, because I don't see enough of today's wrestling to judge. Why I say that? Because every time I watch enough of today's wrestling, I'm serious. I can remember having conversations with Terry Funk. And Terry would get on the phone and he'd say, "Teddy, did you see that shit the other night?" And I said, "Terry, stop watching it." I said, "All it's going to do is make you mad." And sure as hell, I'd get on the phone with him again and he'd go, "Golly, did you see that stupid shit?" I said, "Terry, you're killing yourself. you're all it's going to do is make you mad."
Oh man, some of the stuff that he was watching, I'm sure, if he's watching modern wrestling, it's, oh boy, yeah.
Yeah.
I can see where a guy like Terry Funk would not be pleased. Matthew Golden is up next. What were your thoughts on Rick Martel? Why do you think he got completely out of wrestling? Another great heel, Rick.
I don't know. I don't know. And I knew Rick. I didn't know him. It's like I didn't have, I have a great relationship with Jake and there's a few other guys that, I didn't get too close to too many guys, but there was a guy who was a great guy. Got along with him fine. And I just don't know. I don't know why I didn't stay. And that's a good question. Now that you asked the question, I'd like to know.
Yeah, it's he doesn't even do appearances anymore. He's just completely out. And I'm sure there's a ton of fans who would love to see him and get his autograph and picture and all that kind of thing, and he just doesn't do it, which good for him. I've heard it's hard to get it out of your system, so he did it. Next up we've got Kevin Cornahos, I think is how you say it. Did you ever wrestle in the Calgary Stampede territory, and have you ever visited the dungeon when the WWE came to Calgary?
I have wrestled in Calgary, and I am very, very much aware of the story of the family. And I've heard a lot of Stu stories, man. Yeah, it's not easy being a Hart.
No, having a dungeon where your father would torture hopeful wrestlers down there in the basement is probably not. It's probably a pretty weird way to grow up. Did you ever set foot in the Hart house?
I don't think so. I don't think I did.
And that's probably a good thing. I'm gonna guess that Stu probably would have tried to get you to come down to the basement.
By that time, Stu, the guys that suffered in the dungeon were guys that were just starting.
Right.
Yeah. It's like Stu's way of breaking you in and making you appreciate what's being done for you.
The things I've heard, I could just picture Stu saying to you, like, "Oh, I've heard your father was a really good wrestler. Maybe you want to come downstairs and." Do you have a Stu impression?
You go, okay, yes. I can still hear people imitating Stu Hart.
Oh, Bruce does a great one. Bruce Pritchard. He's got a good one of just about everybody. Actually, speaking of somebody he does a great impression of, Chip Hodges wants to know, what was it like to work with the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes?
Dusty Rhodes, the American Dream.
There's an impression.
Affect the peel, funky like a monkey. Don't flip flop and fly, if you will.
All right, there you go, folks. That's an underrated impression by Ted
I'm gonna tell you
DiBiase.
what, I loved the Dream. Dusty Rhodes, and I tell you what, when Dusty Rhodes and Dick Murdoch were a tag team, I think they called them the Outlaws. I think that they went to Australia, I think, together or something. But the first time I met Dusty was in Dick Murdoch's house in Amarillo, and I, and just, hey, how you doing? But I just, but I didn't get to appreciate how good Dusty was until I got the opportunity to have a program with him. And then when he came back and Vince put the polka dots on him and stuff. I mean, I think it was a rib, but you know what? He took it and ran with it.
Yep.
He took it and made it work. And I think to his credit, what was that? What's Sapphire? He was Dusty. I could talk about Dusty all day.
I did want to ask before we get off the subject of Dusty. Jake has said before that there was one guy that, when he was early in his career that he was nervous getting into the ring with, and that's Dusty Rhodes, just because you're stepping into the ring with Dusty Rhodes. Yeah. How did you feel about, stepping between the ropes with a legend in the business like Dusty?
Well, by the time I got in the ring with Dusty, I'd been the $1 Million Man. I'd been in the business for years, and I had, I had known Dusty. I mean, like, it wasn't. I wasn't terrified because I just had great respect for who he was. And the fact that I was getting the opportunity to work with him.
The ultimate showman.
Oh yeah. All
right, our last one this week.
It's like, this now there's a story he tells about me.
Oh, please.
And this is while I was back when I was working for the company, and I was part of the creative team. We stayed at the same hotel in Stamford, Connecticut, and one morning, we went down and had breakfast, and I just fell off my chair and anyway. But to hear Dusty tells the story. He said, Teddy, he says, you were eating your eggs, and he said you took a drink of your coffee, and you put your coffee down, and your eyes rolled in the back of your head, and you fell right off your chair. He says, and I picked you up and I threw you over my shoulder, and I raced out the front door. I threw you in my car. I raced you to the hospital. I saved your life. I just asked Dusty every time we get in the crowd. I said, Dusty, tell everybody how you saved me. He goes, he's great. He is just sensational.
What happened? Why'd you fall off your chair?
It was just one of those things. I guess they said, I stayed one night in the Stamford hospital, and it was, I don't know, lack of fluid or something.
Okay.
I don't know. It was nothing serious.
Like dehydration.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. Well, glad you're all right, and glad the American Dream saved you. That's incredible.
I saved my life.
Not everybody gets to have a Dusty saving their life story, but you do. All right, last question. It's Professor Cookie Athens, and they ask, what do you think of the fans who dress as wrestlers and take pictures with you at the cons? Also, have you ever had to take a picture with a fan dressed up as you?
Oh yeah, I've done that. I've done a few of those. I mean, that's really, I'm grateful. It's like they thought enough of me as a character on a show they liked to actually dress up like me, and I mean, to make an outfit. I've had couples come in with their newborn babies dressed like me. That's really cool. And me taking a picture, with a baby dressed in a $1 Million Man tuxedo.
That's pretty unique.
Yeah. But I'm very grateful. I mean, I've always said, wrestling fans are the greatest fans in the world because they're so loyal. Once they're with you, they're with you. And anyway,
Now,
hey, I tell everybody, I said, if it weren't for fans, I wouldn't have made any money.
that's right. I mean,
No fans, no money.
you owe your career to the fans.
That's
Certainly.
right. Absolutely.
Now, has anybody ever shown you a tattoo of yourself?
Yes.
What do you think when you see forever emblazoned your image on somebody's body?
That is really, I don't know. That's going a little bit too far, but hey, to each your own, man. I guess everybody has a price.
Who's scoring big this NBA season? You are, with all the new ways to get in on the action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. From monster slams to dishing the rock to cleaning the glass, get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make at DraftKings, the home of NBA player props. Here's something special for first-timers. New DraftKings customers bet just $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook because every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code EGAP. That's code EGAP for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/bball. All right, let's get into these listener questions, Ted. I mean, boy, did they bring it this week.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get through as many as we possibly can, and we'll roll the other ones over to the next time. So here we go. We've got Johnny Rose up first. He asks, being a huge fan of British wrestling, I'd like to know Ted's memories of teaming with UK great Pete Roberts in Japan. Any memories he may have of other British wrestlers over the years?
Pete Roberts is a great guy and a great wrestler. He had his own style, and I did on occasion have opportunity to tag with Pete in Japan, and of course, but it was the Japanese style of wrestling is a little bit different too, but to best answer your question is Pete was really good, and Pete was very good at adapting to the Japanese style, as I had to as well adapt. And again, when you're in Japan and you're a gaijin means foreigner, then you're the heel. You're the heel, and unless, of course, the fans and sometimes will turn you babyface depending on your work. But no, I had a world of respect for Pete, and very good, unique style, and I guess I would call it a more British style, and I enjoyed it. I thought it was great.
Stuart Duncan is up next. If you didn't become a wrestler, what would your ideal profession have been? So, Ted, backup plan, anything else stick out to you?
Well, I grew up in the wrestling business. My father was a wrestler. My mother was a wrestler. That's how they met, by the way. My mother's wrestling name was Helen Hild. You can look her up if you're a big wrestling fan, and she was a beautiful woman.
Mm-hmm.
And she also knew how to sell. She was a good female wrestler. But I grew up in this business, and the other thing, because my dad was not only a wrestler, but played football at the University of Nebraska, and Nebraska has just really gone down in terms of it used to be, I mean, it was kind of like Ohio State. Every year, Ohio State is in the top 5 somewhere, or the top 10 somewhere. That's the way Nebraska used to be. And it's not anymore, and that's sad to say, and I don't know why. But I was a big football fan, and so I had early on, I had visions of going to, and I did go to college on a football scholarship, but I realized in college that I was not going to be NFL material because I was pretty slow. As a matter of fact, one day, one of the coaches looked at me and said, "DiBiase, I love your tenacity, but dang it, we're going to have to start timing you with a sundial." And so what they did, because I was recruited as defensive tackle, said, "We're going to move you to offense and give you the benefit of the snap count and an assignment."
There you go.
Because those offensive linemen, they know right when to go, and what their assignment is. And so, but as they told me that, the thought also passed through my head. I said, well, I guess I won't be going to the NFL.
So your plan initially was, I'm going to play in the NFL, and then after that went away, you're like, I'm going to be a professional wrestler. Meaning, there was no safety net, no backup plan. You're like, this is what I'm going to do for a living.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you just hindsight now, Ted of right now, looking back, if neither was an option, you couldn't be a wrestler, couldn't be a pro football player. I mean, is there some profession that you're drawn to that maybe you feel like you'd like to do for a living?
Well, no, Al, no, I guess because my older brother Mike is extremely intelligent, a near genius IQ. And, I think he got he had a master's degree in psychology, and he was a teacher. And he could teach college level mathematics.
Wow.
And so I guess my thought was, I might not be a teacher like that, but I looked at myself as being probably a teacher of some kind and a coach.
Okay. We've got another long question here next, but it's one that I've seen asked quite a lot since we've started the podcast. So it's finally time. Jonathan O'Dwyer asks, as critical as Ted has been of Ultimate Warrior through the years, still in the Self-Destruction DVD, he said that Warrior respected Ted's knowledge of the business, and he never personally had a problem with him when they were working together. And in Ted's book, Every Man Has a Price, he said that Warrior was one of the guys he said goodbye to when he left the WWF in 1996. So my question is, does Ted have any good memories of spending time around Warrior? It sounds like it wasn't all bad back when they were working together, and the animosity grew in retrospect. I wish they had buried the hatchet.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like when and again, and I've said that I had no use for the guy because he didn't respect the business. It was kind of like, I had all the respect. I mean, to have a body like that takes a lot of discipline.
Yes.
Not, what you eat and how you train and how dedicated you are to it. So I respected that about him. But what angered me is that he came into a business that has been a part of my life for my entire life, and he disrespected the business. He didn't have, it was kind of like wrestling was a means to an end for him. I don't ever remember a time. I don't ever remember saying anything about liking him.
Right.
I did not like him. And that's, I mean, there's what other, I mean, did I know him personally enough? No, I don't think anybody got to know him personally enough, because I don't think he tried to get to know anybody personally enough.
Right.
It was kind of like, I'm telling you, it was a means to an end. And, the only thing he had to do with where I was concerned is, if he's in the ring with me and I'm the heel, you're going to do what I tell you when I tell you. And I put, like so many others, I put him over. It was my job. And in that respect, we didn't have a problem, because, if he'd have done anything out there, you know what I'm saying? If he just took it on himself, he said, no, we're going to do it this way. I would have said, like hell we are.
Maybe that's what. So, I mean, the quote here that this guy has from that DVD about Warrior is that you said that Warrior respected your knowledge. And maybe that's kind of what we're driving toward here, where it's like, okay, he respected you enough to defer to you whenever you were in the ring with him and say, do exactly what you say when you say to do it out there, right?
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Okay.
But yeah, so this whole thing, it really stuck out, because I was like, there is just no way that Ted was like, putting over Warrior in any capacity. So that's interesting.
Well, and again, what fans don't know. I mean, it's kind of like, okay, I'm a huge football fan. I'm a huge professional football professional football fan. So, okay, as a kid growing up, Dick Butkus, number 51, defensive middle linebacker for the Chicago Bears, one of the toughest SOBs ever, and had the reputation of being just I don't think there's anybody that didn't respect Dick Butkus. And I don't know anything about his personal life or his personal history. And I don't know, and it's like, what I'm trying to say is this: it's like, here's this guy who was a phenomenal football player, but in real life, how do I know that he wasn't a jerk?
Right.
Or how would I know if all his teammates thought he was an asshole? And I don't think that's true either. I just, it's just like, all I know is what I saw on the field, and what I respected as a kid loving football. Dick Butkus was one of them, and there was another one, Ray Nitschke.
Oh yeah, Packers
for the Green Bay Packers. Oh my gosh, wow.
But you just never know. To your point, it's kind of like separating the art from the artist, where I think that a lot of fans look back on the Warrior and think of him really fondly, because they're like, oh man, I had this toy of him as a kid, and I remember his promo, and it was fun because I didn't know what he was saying, but it didn't matter because I'm excited because he's excited. Like a lot of people felt that way about the Warrior, and it's like,
well, and I can't fault fans for that,
right?
Because they don't know the backside.
Yeah.
But you go ask 20 wrestlers that were in the business with him what they thought of him, and you're going to get the same answer from all of them.
I've asked enough folks over the years to have convinced me that maybe not a great dude. And look, I mean, you are one of the most affable, kind, easy to get along with people I've talked to in wrestling. And I feel like if it's probably not all that easy to piss you off, and he certainly managed to. So it speaks volumes.
Well, what the piss me off part was, just kind of an arrogance. Or like a I don't give a shit attitude about. In other words, okay, I respected the fact that here's this guy. Oh my gosh, what a body! And I understand how disciplined he had to be to look that good.
Yeah.
Okay, but that apparently he thought was all he needed, because when he got in that ring, if there wasn't somebody like me on the other side of that ring who could lead him by the nose, he was helpless. It was like, okay, tell me, Marcus, what did you see the Ultimate Warrior do in every single match you ever had?
Oh man, like the shoulder block, shake the ropes, get
Shake
blown
the
up on the way
rope.
to the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's it.
that's about it.
That's it.
Yep.
That was
Um,
his rep, and that's what he could do. And I don't blame any fans for being a fan of the guy, because you're a fan of the character, and he's this wild character, this great bigger than life guy, and and uh in his promos, he was, for me, it was funny. It's like he talked for 3 minutes, and I'd scratch my head and go, "What did he say?"
it was incoherent.
Yeah,
But so admittedly, when I'm a kid, it's like, hey, this guy's got this crazy hair and he's super jacked and he's wearing all these, great colors. And so when I'm a kid, I'm like, I'm not thinking about his work rate. I'm not thinking about how long the match is. He comes out and he squashes somebody in like 30 seconds and shakes the ropes and he's excited. And so as a kid, I'm watching him. I'm like, I'm excited. Like, look at this guy. He's crazy.
yeah,
But, as you get older and start to see like a guy like you or a guy like Jake, guys who like really knew what they were doing in the ring, he just sticks out like a sore thumb. Like, he's awful. He is an awful wrestler. Like, not good at all.
yeah.
But yeah, it's catching people at the right time in their lives. For me, I'm whatever 5 or 6. So I was like, yeah, I love this guy. But now that I'm an older man, I'm like, ooh, he's awful. He's not a good wrestler.
And I don't know, and I'm not, I can't remember now. When did he die?
He died in 2014.
And what did he die of?
I believe it was heart failure, and it was if you remember, he appeared on Raw. It was like the night after WrestleMania. He came out on Raw and he did a promo, and he was wearing like a plastic warrior mask and like a trench coat, and then he took off the mask and he was very, very red faced during this promo. He just didn't look well. He looked like sweaty after cutting a promo. And then here, lo and behold, it's like the next day, I believe he was in the airport, and I want to say it was Phoenix, Arizona, and suffered a heart attack there and died. So I think that he was difficult or pretty hard on his body with all the stuff he was putting into himself to get so big, and all the training.
There's the deal there. It's kind of like, and I can't remember. I know that they eventually started testing guys for, steroids and stuff, but I don't know if they were doing that at the time that the Warrior was with us. But
they did. And what's funny is, Warrior went away for a little bit, and then I believe he made a return in like 92 or something. So yeah, he had a falling out. I want to say in like late 91, left the company, came back in 92 briefly, and then back in 96 as well. And like very, very distinct difference in his physique, where it's like it was very clear that they had made some mandates when it came to steroid use.
Yeah.
And like he went from being this giant, bulky, huge guy to like very muscular still and ripped, but very lean. Same thing happened to Hogan. If you look at Hogan from the 80s versus the 90s, it's like still very muscular guy, great shape, but nowhere near as big as he once was.
Yeah.
So you can see the effects of the steroid trial. Okay, we can hammer on Sandalphon Frostburn, if that is your real name, asks, Ted, have you ever wrestled Ricky Steamboat or Tito Santana one-on-one? And if so, who is better in the ring? I think Tito doesn't get the credit he deserves. So who is better, Tito or Ricky?
Tito and I go way back. Tito Santana, his real name is Merced Solis. And he was the starting tight end at West Texas State, and we played football together. That's how far back he and I go. And as a matter of fact, and I can't remember who broke him into the wrestling business. But the first time that I went to New York, we went together, and I ended up staying a shorter time, and he stayed a longer time. And I think this is back when the old WWF, it was like, I'll be honest, I was surprised at the matches, because a lot of the matches I saw didn't meet up to my standard or anybody's standard in any of the other territories. It was like all these great big muscled up guys, but the matches were, I don't know, they were just easy to see through, in my opinion. And anybody else, I think, that was very much involved with the wrestling business, it just was not as believable. I don't know that Tito and I actually, I can't recall us. We were a tag team. I can't remember if we actually wrestled each other.
I think you did, because I know I've seen a picture of you two out there. You're both very young in it, and he's got you in a headlock. So that picture's floating around out there.
Maybe a baby face match.
Yeah.
I know, we did, because it was a big deal because we both went to West Texas State, and now that was the thing, was like these two guys who played football together are now going to be, going head to head against each other in a wrestling match.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say, I'd give the edge to Ricky Steamboat. I only had one match with Ricky Steamboat, and brother, we tore it down. And you talk about a guy. It's like, for me, it was like being in heaven. Because here's a guy. Like instinctively, just the things that he did instinctively that I could read, and vice versa. I said, "Oh my God! If I could have had a program, when I say a program, that means, you have the initial contact where you really screw the guy as a heel, and you screw the baby face over really bad, and then you have a series of matches that build to ultimately a cage match or a whatever type of match." And I wrestled him one time and loved it.
You can't go wrong selecting Steamboat, man. Some of the classics that he's been involved in, incredible. And it speaks volumes. You worked with him one time, and you can make that judgment call. That says an awful lot about Ricky and his skill.
Yeah.
All right, we'll do a few more, and I'll let you go, Ted. We've got Donald J. Simmons, who asks, based on storylines only, which was your favorite territory to work in? Which, based on response, not money, was your most successful feud? So, two questions there.
Based on storylines.
So yeah, let's start there. He asked, based on the storylines, which was your favorite territory to work in? So you had some great stuff in Mid-South, but man, a lot of the stuff you did in WWE is phenomenal. You and as we've talked about, Tommy Rich, some really good stuff. So you could go a lot of different directions here.
Yeah,
you had to pick one.
Golly. I would probably have to say, because it was most memorable for me, was that, I had been a babyface in Mid-South from the very beginning. And I had left Mid-South and come back to Mid-South. I was still a babyface. But when I turned heel on Junkyard Dog, that was probably, in terms of drawing and, money making, for territorial wrestling, that was the best. That's, my heel turn on JYD, I'm like, oh my gosh. I can
Hard to
remember.
beat.
I can remember. I think I told this story, but I think I remember telling the story that I went to Grizzly Smith, who was the guy who was like the agent. He showed up at the show in New Orleans, and and it was specifically New Orleans because the crowd in New Orleans was about 90% black, and they loved JYD, right? And they, up until that time, they had loved me. So I told Grizz, I said, I'm not driving my car to New Orleans. He said, why? I said, because it'll be on blocks or it'll be torn up, when I come out. And he says, okay, I get that. He says, well, you ride with me, I'm neutral. So I rode with him. JYD and I go out there, and of course, we do, he just beats me from pillar to post, and the crowd's going wild, and I slip in and load the glove and knock him out, and we'll see you next week. Draw another crowd. And so I go back and I'm showered up and everything, and Grizz comes walking in the dressing room, puts his hands on his hips, and he's looking at me and just shaking his head. I said, what's wrong, Grizz? Just shaking his head. I said, something wrong with the match? He said, the match was great. I said, so what's wrong? He said, they slit my tires. All 4 of them. I see. I said, they only slit your tires. I said, if I'd have driven my car would have been on blocks. They'd have taken the tires.
So you kind of answered his second question there, because the second question was, which, based on response, not money, was your most successful feud? So I would say that, if you're inciting a crowd to put, slash people's tires and beat up on cars, that's a pretty successful feud. It does make me wonder, though, Ted, if we go the other direction and we say, okay, from a money-making perspective, what was your most successful feud? You don't have to give me any figures, but who do you think you drew the most money in your career with?
Wow. Oh. Man, oh man, oh man.
It's got to be in WWE, right?
Yeah, and it's like, and I was a heel from the get-go there, $1 Million Man. Who did I start off with there? Do you remember?
Well, I'm trying to think, obviously they always say, like, you want to be the heel in the main event because that's where you make the most money. So I'm trying to think, okay, who is he main eventing with?
Well,
And gotta be Savage, Hogan.
Okay. WrestleMania 4 was my first WrestleMania.
Mm-hmm.
And I, ended up, it was a tournament to declare a new champion. And that was because I seemingly had bought the title from Andre the Giant. And the main event there was me and Savage at WrestleMania 4. And I think as far as a significant, because it changed so many things. Basically, I changed Randy, who had been a heel. I came in and made him a babyface in one match.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one match, was, it was the springboard for the rest of my wrestling career. Me and Savage at WrestleMania 4. And the really cool thing about that is we had this great match, and that was the first time Randy and I had ever wrestled each other.
You guys tore it down, and actually we talked about that, and it would have been the second episode of our podcast.
Yeah.
If I want to go back into the archives and have a look. So, and then following that, you and Savage, as we discussed, you guys would continue a program. And I mean, we're talking about SummerSlam '88, the cage matches. You're kind of working the loop with him. That's got to be the most money you made?
Yeah.
Over the course of your career, right?
Yeah, I would say so. Yeah.
That's a hell of a good run. Okay, couple more quick ones and we're all done. Rob Sykes asks, who is the biggest cheapskate in the WWF or WCW? Who is the cheapest guy you traveled with or saw, cutting corners?
Okay. Oh gosh. I'm gonna say Savage. I mean, Randy was notorious for. I mean, there would be times where, like, we'd fly into Chicago and we'd be there for we wrestle in Chicago on a Friday night, Saturday night in Milwaukee, Sunday night in Green Bay, and then drive all the way back to Chicago. And to get on a flight out the next morning. Well, by the time you get back to Chicago from Green Bay, it's late, and I mean, and Randy wouldn't get a hotel room. He and Elizabeth would sleep in the rent-a-car because he was too cheap to get a room.
I didn't even factor in Liz in all this. I'm like, oh yeah, Savage sleeping in his car, and then you said he and Liz, so he's forcing his wife to sleep in a rental car. That is next level cheap. Wow.
Yeah, and so I mean, yeah, Randy was pretty tight. He was notoriously tight.
Did you ever do that thing? I always hear about guys over the years who would see who could stay in the worst, cheapest hotel. Did you ever do that, or not for you?
I tried not to.
Jake told me about staying in a $6 per night hotel once, and oh man.
Oh gosh.
Did not sound
I'm going to tell you what, right here in Jackson, Mississippi, where I don't live in Jackson. I live in the suburb of Jackson, but I'm telling you what, there was one hotel, and Jackson was not a place where we often stayed over anyway. And when we did stay over, we stayed over like at a it was like in going north on Highway 55. There was a pretty nice hotel there, but this one, for whatever reason, every hotel in the dang city was full. There was something going on, and we had to stay in this Dewdrop Inn that was right on the borderline about the worst part of Jackson, Mississippi. It's kind of like, you can hardly sleep for wondering if somebody's going to bust through your door. I can't remember the name of it, like the Dewdrop Inn. I don't know.
Oh man, it's some of the places I've heard about. Ugh, awful.
Yeah.
All right, last one, and I'm letting you go. Jimmy asks, what is your favorite food and which city has the best? Ted, I'm from Pittsburgh. Have you ever tried Permane Brothers?
Have I ever tried what?
Permane Brothers sandwiches, the famous Pittsburgh sandwich.
Oh yeah.
Pretty good.
Pretty good. Pretty dang good. But my favorite food, well, being raised in an Italian family, lasagna, spaghetti and meatballs, spaghetti and Italian sausage.
All right.
That's a killer.
Yep.
But the other, and of course now the other half of my upbringing, I spent a large portion of my life in Texas and in Arizona. So you find me a good Mexican food restaurant and I'm there.
Ooh.
Enchiladas and tacos, and it's not Taco Bell.
No, sir, not down there.
I'll even eat Taco Bell, but no, yeah. We had there was the one restaurant in Benson, Arizona, which is 35 miles from Wilcox, Arizona, where I went to high school. Mm-hmm. Benson, Arizona is only about 50 miles from a very famous Western town, Tombstone.
Ah, okay.
And so Benson, and there was my grandmother's truck stop was on the west side of Benson. And she had this great big sign. I mean, you could sign. I mean, it looked like the size of a full 18-wheeler, and that's what it's in the shape of, an 18-wheeler. Marie's truck stop. On the other side of Benson, on the east side, going back towards Wilcox was Jesse's Mexican food. My grandmother would call Jesse's and order us like a whole pan, like a whole pan of beef enchiladas and the whole works. So yeah, I mean, Italian and Mexican. Yeah, that's me.
Now, what city had the best Italian that you've had?
Oh, yeah. Oh man,
New York.
You know what? I would have to say New York, and I'm trying to think. I know I went to. It was a really nice place in Manhattan that we went, and I can't remember the name of this place to save my life. It was so long ago. But I don't remember the name of the place, but I remember one night that when we were in there eating and having a few cocktails, that, there was a back room and all of a sudden, I guess everybody was getting ready to leave from that back room and right through and past us sitting there and out the door was John Gotti.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Well, look, if John Gotti is eating there, there's some damn good Italian food there.
$1 million dreams, tell them all good night. Everybody's got a pod, everybody's got a